All right, welcome to From A to Built, where we explore big ideas shaping the future of our cities. I am Bryson Rayom. I'm here with my co-host, Chris James, and today's episode is all about the Festival Trail, which is a visionary 28-mile zero-emissions people-first corridor. It's poised to transform Los Angeles ahead of the 2028 Olympic Games. So I'm honored to be joined by two amazing human beings here driving this game-changing idea forward. So today we've got Chris Torres. Chris is the founding principal of Agency Artifact. Chris is an award-winning landscape architect and urban designer with over a decade of experience in architecture, design, planning, public art, and community engagement. He has led large-scale multidisciplinary architectural practices both locally and internationally. Notably, Chris has spearheaded projects such as the 2,000-acre Sepulveda Basin Vision Plan, the Pomona Fairplex Specific Plan, and the 50-acre San Fernando Valley 2.0 Master Plan. His work is characterized by a commitment to equity, resilience, and vibrant public spaces. Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Also with us, Hilary Norton. She is executive director and founder of FastLink DTLA, former chair of the California Transportation Commission. Hilary brings over 28 years of experience in community development and transportation. Appointed to CTC in 2019, she has implemented the governor's vision to transform the transportation sector towards zero emissions and equity-based investment. Hilary has been instrumental in initiatives like the California Action Plan for Transportation Infrastructure and the Equity Advisory Committee. Her leadership has been pivotal in promoting sustainable mobility solutions, including Metro's express lanes, the Los Angeles streetcar, and the festival trails. So again, thank you both so much for joining us. We know you're both very extremely busy individuals working on unbelievable projects all over LA. We really appreciate you both being here, and we're really excited to jump in and talk about the festival trail. So I think we'll just kind of dive right into what this is. I think what we do is we kind of take us back to the beginning. Where did this idea and this festival trail come from? The name, how did it all start? And just throw it over to you.
Sure. I might start if that's all right.
Yeah, jump in.
Absolutely.
So yeah, thanks for having us. Happy to be here and congrats on the podcast.
Thank you.
So yeah, the festival trail started, I want to say around 2 years ago, a little more than 2 years ago. And it was really born out of work that my office was doing as part of the Sepulveda Basin Vision Plan. So we were working for the city to master plan a 2,000-acre property. That's now the official vision plan that's been adopted for the future of that park. So it's going to be around a $3.5 billion park coming to LA. And so there's going to be an Olympic venue in Sepulveda Basin. So there's going to be skateboarding, BMX, and one of the basketball sports are going to be there. So we did a lot of work with LA 2028 trying to understand what is permanent and what is temporary. And it was kind of through that process I really understood what is happening and what isn't happening during the games. And it's really unique here in LA than other cities and other major Olympic hosts, where the role is quite focused for LA 2028, and it's really focused on putting on the event and then providing housing and transportation for media, athletes, and VIP.
Okay.
Almost everything else, there's some caveats, but almost everything else is really on the host city to deliver, to fund, and implement. And so really seeing the need for a visionary project to tie together all neighborhoods and all communities across the region, not just in the city of LA, but across all 88 cities we have in the county. And so we really just started thinking, what is a big impact project that could really be supportive of work that's already happening, and how do we center that around transportation? And so that was kind of the nexus of it, was like seeing that there's a real need here, and it's actually a gap in our Olympic contract where there really isn't a legacy component funded. There's a lot of unfunded mandates, which is a phrase I've learned, that different departments and agencies strive to see legacy happen. But in terms of saying, hey, there's a fund to then allocate, that's not what we have. So, once we realized transportation was the key, the team quickly grew to Hilary and Eli from Move LA, which are two of the top leaders in transportation in the country, to really add a tremendous amount of horsepower behind the project.
It's amazing.
I feel like that's a great segue to the next question, which is Hillary. I mean, as an early partner, as a coalition partner, how did you find yourself being a part of this effort? And what inspires you about it? I mean, it's an incredibly ambitious undertaking. What really, I think, grabbed you and said, I need to be a part of this initiative?
Well, it really was the fact that Chris captured the turning point that we're experiencing in the state of California and with mobility and also just with connectivity. I think COVID reminded us how we are needing to have our transportation come back to that active transportation. Where do we walk? Where do we roll? Where do we go? And because we were in this moment of needing to have a new zero emissions sensibility and seeing that from the 30,000 foot level at the CTC and understanding how Chris was really capturing the fact that we want to reintroduce people to the region, not as the car capital of the world, the traffic snarl capital of the world, but actually as a series of diaspora neighborhoods that are connected by the ability to walk, bike, roll, and take transit to each of these areas. And for me as well, as someone who has been long a supporter of people with disabilities and working with my own parents are people with disabilities, my grandmother was someone with disabilities, that if we were going to put on the very first Paralympics, how do we make sure that we are presenting to the world and actually making good on our promises to have infrastructure that's accessible to everyone? Because as we speak, there are 1 million people in the county of Los Angeles that identify as someone with disabilities physically. And over 26% of LA County's population is over 65. We have an opportunity to reconnect our region, but also make it a more accessible region, a more legible region. And when you look at what was happening with Paris, and that despite the fun of going to individual events, what people really responded to as well was the People's Marathon, was all of the places in the arrondissements that were about community expressions and where people want to go. And that when Chris was talking about what do we do for access for people with 15 million tickets, but also the fact that 25% of people are going to be ticket holders and the other 75% are going to just come to the region and say, what do you got? This is an opportunity to show people what we have, who we are, and how to engage with this region in ways that I think are going to teach ourselves how to examine and travel throughout the region. And that was so exciting. And Chris just being this visionary, not only landscape architect, but visionary of how we engage housing, transportation, resiliency, and a new, more verdant landscape was just, how could you not want to be just wrapped up in all that? It was exciting. And it's been exciting through 300 meetings explaining this and watching
I only
people.
had 200 down here. So
And watching people listen to Chris and just nod and say, place themselves in Chris's, environment is very fun. Being an early person in that and then watching everyone else say, this is where I have to be is pretty cool.
There's a spiritual component to what you've done, what you've accomplished. I mean, 300 meetings, different groups, different peoples, those with disabilities, those without, those with different ethnic backgrounds, those with different walks of life, different perspectives. LA is one of the most diverse metros in the world, but just from all of that, I mean, you talked about accessibility. Maybe you could walk us through the map. How have you woven accessibility into this overarching framework? Is it more decentralized? Is it more, are there more accessible paths that you're envisioning? Like, how exactly are you really trying to knit together this incredibly diverse coalition that you've assembled?
Yeah, I'll start. So the big idea is basically to say we have around 36 months and we don't have a clear bucket of money to work with. So how do you, in a very kind of DIY way, activate and celebrate all the infrastructure that's already coming to the region? So, something that is always blows my mind is that when you look at the map that we have for Metro today, you look at all the train lines we have. In 1984, the last time we had the Olympics, that didn't exist. There was not a single train. We built all of that since then. No other city in the world's built that much infrastructure. And so we sometimes forget, we compare ourselves to Paris and New York, and you're like, oh, why isn't there a train on every corner? I'm like, hey, we built the second most used transit system in the country in just the last few decades. Mm-hmm. And we actually have a lot more coming as well. And so our theory of change is to say, okay, let's look at all the projects that are already funded, they're already in construction, and they're earmarked to be completed before or around the games. And let's really create intentional celebrations along those corridors so that there's ways for every community to be able to use that infrastructure, that public transportation. It's walking, biking, and rolling, different modes of public transportation, and do it in a way that's truly equitable to tell the authentic story of every community. And so the work isn't so much about needing to build a whole new line. It's more about connecting the dots between each mode of transportation and then creating those critical investments in culture and arts and housing along the corridors. So it's those connection points that right now, sometimes they don't exist at all. And I mean, Hilary, you could talk a little bit more about maybe the history about how we got here as a city, the Willits case, and why this is actually more than a nice idea. This is actually like a law.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I think that's it. The key about the ADA compliance versus being able to be very focused on how to deliver more than just compliance, but actually an uplift. And the Willits case is the case that the city of Los Angeles lost that said, we are way out of compliance with our sidewalks. We are, in losing this case and in negotiating what the agreement would be, there's over $1 billion in sidewalk improvements that need to be made that aren't being made yet. There's a lawsuit with one of our partners, the CalLife. It's one of the regional centers for people with disabilities that has said and sued the city of Los Angeles Rec Parks to say your parks are not accessible. And one of the other projects that Chris is working on is how to create new parks that are fully intentionally accessible and have much more to offer people with disabilities. But I think going back to our very first charrette for the festival trail, we wanted it to be at the heart and the birthplace of the city of Los Angeles. So we had it at El Pueblo. And what was wonderful, but also a very big lesson, was that it's accessible by transit, but the gap between the Union Station and getting up to El Pueblo, we actually had to work on having people, shuttle service with Butterfly, pick people up from Union Station and have them travel up to the Pico House on Main. For us, it's just a block, but for someone with disabilities, it's a huge, chasm. And one of the things that was wonderful was we actually sent out a map that said, here's where you go, here's where our reception's going to be, and that's fully accessible. But we did it with a pictorial map. And when we sent that out to everyone, not just who we thought would respond in terms of having physical disabilities, but we sent it to everyone, we said that on Thursday, and our charrette was the next day. We had so many more RSVPs because they were saying, you're serious about this. You want us to come, and you're sending this to everybody. So people who have not admitted that they may need these services are going to come too. And when people came in the room, I can tell you that I still get told, we haven't seen rooms like this, because people with all types of abilities were there, and it was a very diverse room. And when people came in and saw who was at the Pico House, who wanted to hear this, and people of all abilities, it was like, this says what the festival trail is all about. Even from the logo, that it's a logo with someone in a wheelchair and people who are not in wheelchairs, but may also have other abilities, compromised. we think that those are that opportunity to celebrate together is what our ethos is all about. And just again, it's what Chris came to create, is like, how do we bring that all together and help us get to know each other, but celebrate together, that there isn't a separate entrance, there isn't a separate way to go. We're all going to go in this direction.
Yeah.
That's been a game changer for so many people who are finally saying, why aren't we doing that everywhere all the time?
Yeah, that was such a powerful event too, down at the Pico House. And, it's a good segue because, and I know it's the festival trail and it's so much bigger than the Olympics overall. I think that was the first thing I keyed in on when we were talking about it. Chris was like, look, Olympics are great. I don't care. This is about LA and changing the fabric of our city for the better.
Right.
And that's what was really amazing to me. But circling back to the Olympics a little bit, there's this big conversation around they want this to be the car-free Olympics, right? That's what they're saying. It's like, we don't want people in their cars.
Right.
We want this to be, we want them to use public transportation. So everything that you're saying resonates so much. But what does that look like, and how does the festival trail play into us being able to pull off a car-free Olympics?
Yeah, I think it's helpful to actually go back a little bit. So when Paris and LA bid for the games together, so believe it or not, we were supposed to be 2024. If you can only imagine that. And we matched our decarbonization goals. So a lot of the work that you saw happen in Paris in terms of building pedestrian-only streets, like removing cars from streets or building bike lanes, or the massive amount of urban trees they planted. Our like drop the mic moment was, it's going to be car free. And we're like, oh, like, how are you going to do that? They're like, it's going to be great. And I think now we're like, oh man, how are we going to do that? And I think the challenge here is not a challenge of a kind of a technical need of how do you actually get people to use transportation. It's actually all money related, and it's all tied to our relationship with the federal government, right? And so that fracture that happens anytime that you're not in alignment with what's happening at the federal government, there's no way for Metro or any transportation agency to deliver their projects if they don't have a tremendous amount of money coming through from the federal government. And I think that, in a way, is the actual nexus of the car-free challenge. It's not that we haven't been able to build infrastructure. We've done that. We've built a lot of that. But it's really this funding piece. And so I think that's why when we approached our project, we, of course, are looking at all dollars and public dollars and applying for grants with different agencies. But we realized that this actually needs to be like a P4 model. So it's like, P3 is like public-private. P4 is wrapping that with philanthropy and private sector and aligning those interests together. So this car-free thing, like the more you kind of pull on that thread, it's actually kind of an unraveling of how you build cities today.
Yeah.
And the kind of cold reality that it's truly not working anymore.
I want to key in on that kind of P4 model, because that was the first time I heard that phrase last night at the event that you held to celebrate the trail and to build community, as you have been doing the last few years. But talk more about this. I mean, what is a P3 model for those in the audience that don't know? And then, like, what is this P4 concept you're trying to unleash?
Do you want to talk about this a little bit?
Sure. I think P3s have been normally thought of as public-private partnerships, right? Well, there's P4 models are public-private philanthropy partnerships, but I think sometimes also the fourth P is just people, and thinking about building space for people and building that different ethos about travel for people. And I think the car-free Olympic and Paralympic challenge is awesome, but let's not forget that we just approved a DTLA 2040 plan with 0 parking minimums. I mean, we are trying to have a car-free lifestyle. And so how do we do that and incorporate in new design more space for people, less space around the car, but when we need a vehicle, it's going to be there at the right time and in the right way. And wheelchair accessible vehicles are part of that. Electric vehicles are part of that. That other sensibility about how we're going to have vehicles in our lives are great, but let's also agree that we have a new generation of kids who don't want to drive. We are realizing that cars are expensive and we park them 95% of the time. How do we create new systems that say we shouldn't just be storing cars and getting on with our lives? What would our world look like? What would our region look like if cars weren't the answer, and certainly storage of cars weren't what we were giving up most of our space to? And so I think it's really great, in that sense of having our other partner, Eli Lippman of Move LA, because as one of the co-founders, because Measure R and Measure M are all about getting away from that car-focused lifestyle and investing in transit and transportation as it should be. And I think that sense of then how do we then create more space for people, create more landscaped space, create more beauty, because we're not just having to think, where does the parking structure go?
Yeah, absolutely. I want to back up just a little bit here, because something that just popped into my head was, we're all new to podcasting here, but the idea of what the festival trail is, I realized we never really dug into what you're trying to pull off here, because that is what is the most exciting piece to me, is when you look at this map that's up here on the TV and you really understand the scale of this and how it would truly transform LA. I mean, it's hard not to get excited about this. So I really want to make sure people understand. And if you're listening, Chris will walk you through it. If you're watching, you can see up here on the screen what it would do for us, how we could hop on these pedestrian trails, whether it's walking, jogging, using an electric bike. It would just change how we would get around LA, and it's very, very exciting. So maybe run us through a little bit more of the details of
that. I might actually go back a couple of slides here, if that's all right. So I think it's important to understand just the sheer magnitude of folks we're going to have here during the Paralympic and Olympic events. That's not what we want. 1 second. So if you think about a Super Bowl, right? So imagine the amount of planning, media opportunities, the whole kind of festival that circles a major sporting event. If you think about a Super Bowl happening and you think about 7 Super Bowls happening at the same time in the same city, you're like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. How are people going to get around? If you think about 7 Super Bowls happening at the same time every day for 6 weeks, is the magnitude. So it's 15 million tickets, largest peacetime gathering in U.S. history.
Largest peacetime gathering.
Exactly.
Just want to clarify.
Exactly. So, this is unfortunately the experience. And for folks that are listening in, I mean, we're just talking about the reality of living in Southern California is you're so often in your car. But when you have that scale of a challenge, there's literally not enough Ubers to go around. And so the quality of service, the level of service you have with public transportation needs to be exceptionally high. And I like to say that the alternative needs to be excellent for folks to really adopt it, right? And that's the hearts and mind part of this project, is that even though this might make all the sense in the world, most Angelenos will be like, I don't know. I'm just used to my car. I love my car. I had a terrible experience that one time I took the bus or the train. And I think that is really the tall task ahead for Metro. So our job is really to celebrate what they're doing and celebrate new ways of moving through the city, and do that in a way that you actually get to experience the region, you get to experience every neighborhood, every culture, every bite, every sound, musical experience. And so we're really trying to partner with folks that do this already. So a big part of what we're doing in terms of building out this coalition is who's on the ground and has been creating innovation in this space. So Ciclavia is one of our core partners that we're exploring many different ways that we're going to connect these kind of open street events with public transportation. But it's also about arts, right? It's also about the bigger urban challenge. And so the idea of the city as a project, as an abstract project, is really what we're tackling. So this started as a way to kind of coalesce many different groups that I had been connected to, organizations that we're working with, and seeing that the need was actually so much bigger than how do you throw a great party. but it was really about how do you actually create almost like a retrospective master plan for Los Angeles. And can you use this opportunity to actually implement the first phase, right?
Yeah.
And so it's all about the deadline. It's all about you have 36 months. Who's going to come to the table? Are we going to drop our egos? Are we going to drop the baggage of how hard it is to do work here? And are we going to really celebrate our city? And if we do that, we think we create a program and a project that really is an expansive representation of what is possible in LA. And so, we're proposing 28 hubs along the trail. So those would be new public spaces that will become moments of community pride and activation during the games. We're connecting over 28 miles of public transportation projects, starting at LAX, all the way through the heart of LA, up to Pasadena, connecting out to Sepulveda Basin in the San Fernando Valley, and connecting down to the Long Beach bike path. And so it really is like a regional project that is going to come down to very, very local participation.
I feel like you answered 10 questions.
It's good. I wanted people to be able to kind of wrap their heads around what it is and what it is, because it's so exciting. And again, it's something where, I love when you pulled up that picture of LA traffic, because that is the LA experience right now. And it's, you have PTSD from it, watching that, seeing that. And I don't travel around LA because of traffic.
Right.
I'm invited to a lot of places and I'm like, I'm not going to sit in 2 hours of traffic. I would love to come, but I'm not going to do that. So seeing this and seeing how it could change how we interact with the city is really, really fun. And again, you guys have been working, how many years now have you been working on this?
It's been a couple of years.
A couple of years?
I was trying to think back when we started, because we started as a summer project.
Okay.
I want to say 2 years ago.
Okay.
And it really came out of these like early meetings I had on the basin, where I was really, frankly, like, I hate to say it, but like very underwhelmed what was being planned.
Okay.
And just the idea that this was going to be not only a no-build Olympics, but a zero legacy experience. And so I just started calling Chris and calling Hillary and calling friends in the mayor's office and calling friends in the county supervisor's office and being like, what are you working on? What's the big idea? And just seeing that even firms that have billions of dollars to work with were really waiting for an RFP. Yeah. Like we'll call you when the RFP comes out and add you to our list. Yeah. And I think that is like the bigger mindset shift that is sometimes hard to communicate when we're talking to partners, that this is not about, acquiring a project. This isn't about getting the job or getting the commission. This is about kind of co-creating the idea, funding the idea, and executing the idea. And that's this P4 thing we're trying to crack, is that when there is an absence of funding and a level of opaque governance, you actually have to kind of be the client and the consultant at the same time. But ultimately, it lets you be in the driver's seat, right? It lets you actually speak with authenticity of the needs of the community, not filtering it through an RFP or a kind of a traditional procurement type process.
Yeah, and as I started this by saying, we have two amazing human beings here, and that everything you just said is a key point to that, because 2+ years working on this project, 300+ meetings, you guys are just doing this pro bono.
Yes.
Like there is out of the kindness of your hearts, which is unbelievable.
I took home a baguette from you last night. I went home and told my wife, this is the first payment I got. This extra baguette.
Those underground benefits
it was a good baguette,
that you've been getting. Yeah. But thank you for trying to do this for our city, because that's number one, amazing. But through all those 300+ meetings that you guys have had, from where you started 2 years ago to where you are now, did you learn anything through those meetings, talking to the communities that kind of shifted your vision for the trail overall to where we are now?
Yeah, I think one of the things that has just been fantastic is how much people want to connect. They're like, thank you. We want more through lines. We don't want dots on maps. We want paths. We want to connect. We want people to understand that we are not these disparate, collections of enclaves, but we are trying to reconnect. And I think that's, as a parent, I have a 26-year-old son and a 22-year-old child, and my son just got his license in January because my parents might have needed him to pick them up if they were hurt. He did not want to get his license. And so the fact that this generation is like, cars are not necessary and I don't need to drive it, even if I have to be in one. But there's this huge need for connection, huge need for mentorship, this idea of traveling together and actually, frankly, reconnecting our democracy is so important. And I think that was the thing that everyone has resonated with. Like, we want to go here. We want to learn about this. And if you go back to the other map, Chris, where you've got more of the West Side and others, people want to rediscover the region they live in. And they want to know, is it okay to come? Who wants us here? How do we engage? I think that has been so exciting. And the fact that we are so upfront about the fact that we are not an accessible region and that we need to be welcoming everybody. Our radical connectivity and our radical equity is just something that people are just so grateful for because it's a language that everybody wants to have and a way that people want to react to something. And there's so much space to place yourself within it. I mean, that's the thing that was great, was the sort of like, can we do this? Can we do this? And our answer's always been yes. And I think that has been a really different experience than most people are finding.
I think, talk about 300 plus meetings over a couple years, I think any politician in LA would love to have had the experience that you've had. I mean, to actually meet people on the ground, see how they're doing, really get a sense of how the community is doing on the ground. But you've actually done it. So I'm going to ask the question, how's LA doing? Based on everything you've seen and everything you've heard.
I will give my response. And Hilary, I would love for you to give context, because that is the thing that every time we talk and you're like, well, let me tell you about this time. And I'm like, all right, I will learn now.
Because the polling data, it doesn't always pick up some of the nuance in there. So I feel like you guys have something interesting to say.
I think my kind of hyperbolic comment is that I think 2025 was the year the 21st century city died, and it died in LA. And we've been kind of clawing at hoping we could kind of go back to how things used to be, or like, let's just wait this kind of moment out and capital markets will come back and all these projects we're trying to make happen will just magically happen. And I feel like, especially seeing fires happen, that like our relationship with capital, our relationship and trust in government, and our relationship with ecology and nature are so fractured right now. And that the hopeful piece of it is actually seeing how folks across the region actually care for each other, which is something I really didn't know. Like when the fires broke out, I remember we talked. We were supposed to meet with the mayor that week. Yeah. And we talked, and I was like, I don't know, like Hilary, do we keep going here? Like, I mean, like, what's the right thing to do?
Yeah.
And then it was actually seeing how people reacted to that, and seeing people, from Norwalk driving to Altadena to hand out water bottles. Like, not because there's a program, just literally like, I just need to go do something. And I think it clicked with us that we are a region of great need, but we're also a region of great faith and hope. Yeah. And that it's actually when you could connect the dots. And my hope for the electeds that we're working with is that they will connect the dots to realize that the need for a family that's risking displacement in a neighborhood that's gentrifying, and the need for a family that has no idea how they're going to rebuild because their insurance is screwing them over in Altadena, and the need for unhoused folks in downtown LA, they're all kind of similar, right? They're all tied to manufactured scarcity. They're all tied to this like lack of a vision of abundance, and that what we need is a proof of concept of what the next city could look like. Right. And so I think that's where we're like, no, we actually have to keep going, because we could actually be a proof of concept of what this could be. And we're going to use this weird sports event, this weird deadline to make it happen. Yeah. Does that kind of help frame up thinking?
Absolutely.
Help me You've seen the city really
Yeah.
in times of pain. Like,
Yeah.
talk about
Yeah.
maybe when you started your role in
Yeah.
South LA.
That's true because I mean, I started in LA in 1992. I was working for Mark Ridley Thomas right in the aftermath of the civil disturbance, and then I went and worked in the Northeast Valley right when the earthquake happened. And so we've been in these times of like great loss. We've been in these times of like, what are we going to do? And I think, and I will say, Paul Krikorian reminds us that in 1984, we were actually in the midst of a big recession. So like we've had to come and say, can we do big things? And also, can we win together? And I think one of the things that has been so hard for me, because I have been in places where with the community redevelopment agencies and with Genesis LA, we all won. There are ways to have these tax increment financing. There's ways to do things that doesn't have people scared of nice things because that means they're not going to get to stay. And I think that has been the hardest in all my 30 years working on these projects is that sense of like, yes, I want transit. Yes, I want nice things, but can I stay? And so we look at some of the other opportunities with trails and what trails mean for new investment, for what trails mean for permanent investment, and how it brings more tourism dollars, how we can win together, right? We get more money, we're very focused on community ownership, and we're very focused on not having displacement. And so maybe you want to show the affordable housing part because that's really important. But I also want to say that in things like the trail in Atlanta, the Beltline, they actually had a thing where at everybody who was there from 2017 and before, that any increase in their property taxes, they get paid that. They're not having to fund that. So you actually find that people's property values go up, but their costs don't go up. We're the focus on making sure that this is by your community, for your community, and you get to stay. That is huge because I think we're in a time where fear is palpable. And that fear of erosion of what we get, what we have, and whether we get to stay is so just present. And so this opportunity is like, you get to stay, and maybe your kids maybe get to stay, and you get to grow old here, maybe not in your house, but you might want to give your house to your kids so you can go into these other areas. And now you don't have to have a car. We're going to make it so that you can grow old here and you can have accessible sidewalks and accessible ways to get around so that you can continue to be this leader in your community and everyone else can live in the space that you are bequeathing to your next generation. And that was, I think, the aha moment when we were presenting to Miguel Santana from CCF, because the California Community Foundation is all about what that legacy is that starts today. And when Miguel's like, this isn't just about events, this is about what the future of our county needs to be, that was, I think, that sense of like, okay.
Yep.
And it's not lost on me or Chris or Eli that we are all three people of faith. Like there are a lot of God did that moments in what we are coming up with, and the connectivity, and who's coming to the table, and what's coming around the corner, and who wants to sign up, and other projects that want to join. There are a lot of God did that moments. And so there's a lot of faith and hope in this unapologetically.
Yeah, that was the big takeaway for me initially was, it's an amazing trail. I can be able to get to these venues, but it just seems like it keeps getting better in terms of the overall impact. And then we started talking about housing, and everyone's favorite subject in Los Angeles is how do we build more housing in this crisis and affordable housing. And so then you running me through, there's a massive housing component to this trail. Again, it's just keeps getting better.
Yeah.
So kind of run us through what you have up here now about how does housing relate to the trail? Just, making it better?
Yeah, so we studied one leg of the trail. So what you're seeing on the screen here is LAX down here, and then upper right-hand corner is to the LA River. And we basically looked at every parcel within walking distance of the trail to find underdeveloped land, so really low density land, or vacant properties or parking lots. That was kind of the criteria. Totally opportunistic. Everything about this project is like what is lying in front of us. And we found a number of parcels. About half of it's public, about half of it's privately owned land. Not all of the publicly owned land is, it's all used, right? There's uses for these lands, but they could be used for housing, right? So just because someone's using it for a parking lot for trucks doesn't mean that necessarily is exactly the spot where you need the trucks to be parked, right? So I think I do want to dispel that there's just empty land. Every square inch of the city is owned and contested and controlled. That's cities, right? But not to their highest and best use, especially when it's paired with an important corridor. So we took that land, we threw standard setbacks on it, and looked at 3-story density. Just 3 stories, how many units could that create? And we hit 20,000 units just in that one leg. So when you look at the whole trail, it's easily a 6-figure goal that we're working towards, right? So when we met with Congressman Jimmy Gomez, he was like, "Chris, I love your idea, but we need to fix housing across the state of California." I was like, "Okay, let's get another drink." And he's like, "We need 600,000 units." And I was like, I think we could actually get a 6-figure dent in this thing when we actually study this. Because I think what we're saying is that typically TOD, or transit-oriented development, is all about your kind of radial proximity to a transit hub. But when you actually start thinking about this in terms of corridors and actually kind of these linear cities, that if you could get into the trail at any point, you put your bike on at any point, any of that land should really be considered high quality transit-oriented property, right? So through even just a simple tweak to, this is going to get super wonky, but a simple tweak to City of LA's ED1 policies or the TOC program, for example, all of that provides a tremendous amount of benefits to entitled property in proximity to transit. It does not include active transportation. So it's written for buses and trains. So we haven't contemplated how other ways of moving could be integrated into that project. So simple tweaks would allow us to what we're calling now an Olympic zoning overlay, which is really saying, okay, there's going to be a ton of money and a ton of investment coming to these neighborhoods. We need to protect these neighborhoods, but we also need to position them to be really grown through this investment. And so is there a way that we, by creating this high quality active transportation corridor, we could automatically zone this property and entitle it for housing? So that's one cost that we could remove off the balance sheet and hopefully get developers of all types interested in investing in these communities.
I think it's a good segue to one of our bigger questions, which are challenges that you've run into, and maybe the biggest challenges. I mean, I'm sure there have been plenty, but
Not in LA.
No, easy. Yeah.
Well, it's a 2-parter question. I think you guys know the second part of the question that's coming, but what would you say is the biggest challenge that you faced? I'm sorry, there's something in my eye right now, but that from a jurisdictional or technical standpoint, what keeps you up at night? What do you feel has kind of been, let's just say, frustrating in trying to overcome?
I'm going to start? I mean, I think it's about getting everyone aligned to move in the same direction and realizing that this is not a competition. We're actually not, there's no competing interests here, and that we're all trying to make our city better, right? But it kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier, where typically projects come about in this very transactional way of you're getting the project or you're not getting the project. Or you've received the commission, you're not receiving the commission. That only exists in a scenario. It presupposes that there's a tremendous amount of capital sitting there to do the work. So it's a 2-parter, because the challenge is moving in the same direction in a collaborative way, but doing so in the presence of there not being a giant bank of money to say, go do your work, right? So we have to go get the money, right? We have to actually fundraise, design, and implement in a very, very fluid way that's going to cause you all to create the most crazy org chart and Gantt chart of how this would happen. Yeah. But that's the biggest challenge, right? Is it's a different way of thinking about how we build, and it's forcing folks to really come to the table with a posture of like curiosity versus control.
Yeah, I guess for me, there are two things. One is what keeps me up at night is the fact that for people with disabilities, that instead of it being just the natural norm that we are going to deliver a fully universally designed infrastructure network, that we have to talk people into that. That is frustrating to me, because it's like, this is the law, A. It's important on an equitable basis, B. But it is one of the few situations with ADA that you require the person who is the victim of essentially the wrong way of doing things to have to explain and sue for the rights to get it done. That keeps me up at night, because I have seen that in my own life with family members and what it's like to feel trapped because you don't have an infrastructure that merits your movement. The other is, I think there isn't, because we're out of the norm of having community redevelopment agencies and things like that, there isn't a sense of like, we will win together financially. Like there's this sort of, we don't have enough money for that, so we can't invest in this. And it's like, but the way to get out of this spiral of not having enough money, and your point about the death of cities, is that we are not investing in the things that are actually going to pay dividends for a long time. And I think being able to go back and say, look, there are now these climate resiliency districts, there are these enhanced infrastructure finance districts. There are ways to invest in things that are going to have very clear financial benefits and get the city on a healthy footing. And I feel like if there were 3 of us more, we could go out and keep explaining that, because we have a great amount of things that are entitled that if we had the right money at the right time, we could be really getting the cities out of the financial situations that we're in. And I would love to see how we can explain that more and more about how we win together. And there are those examples in other trails and in other major projects that took this on. And I just want to get that out more and more about how we win together equitably.
And I think it's pretty wild when you look at the coalition we put together. Like, we have folks that are at the most grassroots activists. Like, we don't want the Olympics to happen. We also have the Realtors Association. Right? Yeah. And they're both saying we see a place for ourselves in this. Yeah. Right? And I think when we stop, this is like, I talk about this a lot, but we built a city in an urban form that's defined by boosters, real estate, speculative real estate, trying to get their project built, and activists really as the counterforce. And that is the 20th century model of Los Angeles. It's not going to work when you have major fires. It's not going to work when you have climate and heat-related disasters, right? It's not going to work when there's a major earthquake, right? And so, we're still trying to use these old tools and models that are all built on, frankly, litigation to try to fix cultural challenges, right? And so that is the bigger mode shift we have to get out of.
Yeah, I remember at the Pico House, I forget who I was speaking with, so let's take credit for the general idea. But, when we first started talking about this idea, your initial review and concept is this is awesome. And then you start getting down to the logistics of pulling it off, and you're like, oof, this is going to be such a massive lift, especially if you're familiar with LA and working within these types of organizations. So going back to this idea of, community and how do you bring certain sectors of the city together, there was this concept about how can we break the trail apart and then bring together small groups that can focus on their portion of the trail?
Yeah.
Whether it's individual architecture groups
Absolutely.
and teams where it's like, great, we're going to break off and we're going to take all the heavy lifting related to this portion of the trail. So we have a dedicated team that can manage this. But that comes back to, can you find and inspire those teams that aren't just looking for, well, what's the contract and what am I being engaged for, as opposed to, no, there's a bigger play here for the future of Los Angeles.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked to like a lot of different firms and of all kind, not just design, of all professional services. And I think the most sophisticated firms understood that the value creation here is not like a single contract. It's about being able to be part of like the next LA, right? And I always try to tell my team, like, our job is not to compete. Our job is to be uncompetitive. Do not compete. Don't try to compete, but create a service and create a way of working where what you do is just unique. Then you kind of set the terms and you set the price and you set kind of the folks you surround yourself with. And so those are the kind of partners we're trying to find, the folks that are willing to be uncompetitive in this time of the Olympics, but know that their work is actually going to be part of like the legacy. So it really comes down to like the kit of parts, which is what's on the screen now, and how this is really going to be deployed across all these resiliency hubs around the region. So our job is to really prototype what is in the kit of parts, what each community has to work with to find a way to build it at scale. But then each community, in partnership with different designers, both local and international, will give authenticity and texture and flavor to how that hub comes together in their neighborhood, right? So it's giving like, what's the minimal amount of infrastructure we could provide so that you don't have to deal with any permitting headaches, you don't have to buy out contracts from you have to be negotiating with the steel guy versus the concrete guy. Like, we could get all that aligned, and you could kind of take it and run with it. Yeah.
And I like having these backdrops of all of these games, right? You have years and years and years of multiple global competitions, right? Where there's one winner, right? And we're in that space of everyone wins, right? So I love the idea of people coming to see competition and then experiencing what it's like without competition, with collaboration instead. And that's the thing that just makes me excited, is that LA is going to be the backdrop of a lot of events, whether they're concerts, whether there are conventions, whether they're competitions. But if we could show a city that is purposefully pluralistic and shows how we interact together and how, as diaspora cities, we come together in this one like global fun county, we have something for people to visit that is so unique. And that's the part that I think about the festival trail, is like, when you put the flags of all the countries, when you put the country houses along this corridor, we want that to be, in this age of anti-DEI, we want to be so purposefully DEI that it's like, come visit what it's like when this is all you talk about.
And using it as a catalyst moment. And this is where I think the games are so impactful to getting this done. And how many hubs are there again total?
28
hubs around the city.
That's the goal.
So I mean, the concept there of, getting out there, and the philanthropy side of, you need 28 major sponsorships to do these unbelievable hubs that are going to be there for the Olympics, but then past the Olympics for other major games that come into LA. So it seems like, again, high level, such a slam dunk, but getting it done is a different story.
Well, and so the Olympics is a $7 billion event. So LA 2028 has to go from 0 to 7 billion. And the way it works is, if they don't raise the 7 billion, the city of LA is on the hook. The state will kick in a certain amount, and then it comes back to the city. So actually, the city is on the hook for a certain amount. Then it goes to the state. They put in a couple $100 million, and then anything over that, to whatever the balance is our fiscal responsibility. So like, when people say like, I'm afraid the city could go bankrupt from the games, they're not joking.
And how big is the city budget, just for the audience to clarify?
I think it's $11 billion.
It's $11 billion and $7 billion to host the...
Right.
So yeah, pretty
That's a
big.
So,
different
like-
episode.
Yeah.
So Athens, for example, and they had the games. It took them 30 years to pay off the debt, right? It actually sparked the whole financial crisis in Greece, right? And like this is not uncommon. The London Games were a $5 billion event and ended up costing $15 billion. And most of that was taxpayer paid. Like we literally cannot pay the debt. Like we already are in debt by $1 billion, right? So I think I say that when we talk about budget for our project, right? So each hub we're estimating is like $2 to $5 million. It's a big range because it really depends on how permanent we could get them to be. But we want to see representation around the whole city. If we could fundraise the most we can, we'll do them permanent. We'll do more. But like we're talking in the millions versus the billions, right? And being able to have impact throughout the whole region. But it's also good business. Like think about this. Like essentially the festival trail creates physical, spatial visibility for brands that want to tell their story here in LA during the games, right? And I think something that's like was an aha moment as I learned more and more about the disabled community in particular. Like 1 million disabled people, that's 1 million people that could use your services. That's a market, right? Like let's remove the altruistic part of this and actually say like, hey, this is actually good business for LA. And so I think those are the folks, those are the sponsors that we want to participate, that get it. They understand that there's an ability for them to actually help LA, but it's also good for business.
I want to fact check myself. The City of LA budget for 2025 to 26 is $13.9 billion.
Oh,
Gotcha.
And to Chris's point, look at the places that purposefully are universally designed, like a Disneyland, like they're rolling in it, right? Because people can access it. Everyone can experience it. And so if we really take that on and say, we're going to completely redesign our communities and have a really, radical inclusion, that is a winner. Okay. And I just really like this idea of how do we all win in this time of competition.
Nice. If you were to think right now about, what are the top 3 challenges to really just supercharging this and moving this forward? Like, what are the 3 biggest things hurdles that you need to get out of your way to push this forward?
Yeah.
What are those top 3?
I mean, we're super excited that there's incredible people in the mayor's office doing great work that we're excited to be partnering with and working with. I think getting more clarity. The mayor's done executive orders, executive actions in the past. We are excited to see something like that come online and really kind of give clarity for folks to understand how they could give and participate. But it's not just the city, it's also the county. We have awesome relationships with multiple supervisors. And I think we're at a time of kind of alignment. Like, I think that's great. And I think we've done so much work to just meet the people, meet the leaders that are doing the work and make it clear that we're here to help. Right, we're really here bringing the community in force to like execute their vision. That's what's I think going to supercharge this thing, is that like getting that clarity of like, all right, this is something that we could all be a part of, because I think for a few years it's really just been trying to almost in a way meet the immediate emergencies we have. Like we have a housing emergency, we have a homelessness emergency, we have a rebuild emergency with tens of thousands of folks that are trying to go home, right? But I think as we get, now around 36 months away from the event, I think we're really realizing how acute the need is. And so I think I do, for the first time, actually feel like I understand the whole political landscape around the games. For the first time, I could like hold it in my head, and it took 2 years to get there. And I think now that we get it, it's like go time. Okay. Now it's time to like have serious fundraising conversations, meet with sponsors we met with again, and really start executing the work.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, we had AECOM in here the other day, and they're engaged for the Olympics, and it's an interesting conversation hearing about it's they're calling it the setup and breakdown Olympics, which was actually gave me a little bit more of like, okay, I'm on board with that. I feel like you're going to be able to pull something off in 36 months. Yeah. But time is so short at this point where you see that and you say, all right, it's the setup and breakdown Olympics. But then you think, well, Why can't we get something to outlast the Olympics, which is a project like this?
Well, why would we pay for it?
Yeah.
Why would we expose the city budget to like such insane risk and liability?
Yeah.
Like there's literally in the contract, there is no out clause. The city has to put on a games. They have to do it. And they have to pay the balance, right? There's no like, we'll forgive you. And it literally says, even in the case of natural disaster and emergency, you must still do this thing. So like the setup and breakdown Olympics, I think is like completely not acceptable, right? Like why would we do this then? And I think that is going to be the legacy question. That is the political question that people are going to ask after the games of like, why did we do this? Why did we sign up for this? What am I getting in return? And we know the negative effects of these major events that they have on unhoused communities, that they have on undocumented communities. Like there's some real suffering that's going to come. And frankly, there has to be some benefit to outweigh the risk here.
I just want to leave on a like happy note because I think Chris is realistic. He is. But I think on a happy note, as I've experienced this with the civil disturbance and the earthquake, when this region is laser focused, it is really extraordinary. And I think that we have an opportunity to show that our region is still the most creative capital in the globe, that our region has the ability to have this collective unanimity of a goal, but expressed in a million different ways. Like I love that the A of the LA in 2028 is like so many different, because you can't just have just one thing describing us. But the other is that when we put our minds to it and we talk about how we express ourselves and can really do something, that's really magical. And what I love about the festival trail is that there are so many places to express that. That there's 28 miles seems like a long distance, but when you have an electric bike, you can get there in less than 2 hours. You know, you can do all these things and you can place yourself anywhere along this. And I think that's the part where I think the size of what we have isn't daunting when you think about how many people are just waiting to have a place to show what they can do. And I look forward to that.
Yeah, we like to say that we see LA as a city of infinite multiplicities.
Yes.
And that in that ecosystem, there's so many stories that are ready to be told.
Yeah.
Amen.
I like to say that, and I was telling this to Eli last night at the event, your partner in this endeavor, that LA, when you really think of it, you know, it's less a city, it's more of a city state.
Yes.
It's a collection. Sure. It's a collection of, like you said, diasporas, different groups of people all coming together in a very complicated but, you know, unique way. But I think to think about ending on a positive note, I'm interested in, you know, this is a very visionary idea, very powerful, incredible. Who's a visionary leader that you look up to? Who's a visionary leader who's inspired you over the years?
Chris James.
Oh, no.
The whole team at the club.
All right, let's cut it now. No, but in all honesty, I mean, there must be someone or a group of people.
Well, I mean, think of Jason from Destination Crenshaw, the CEO of Destination Crenshaw. It's like incredible. He's like building this one of a kind model of like what Black art and culture means in Los Angeles. They're literally building this thing, right? Like Jason's incredible. We met Kareem Webb is incredible, who's at Lawa and doing work throughout South LA. Some of our other partners, Karen Mack at LA Commons, just you know, hit 25 years running the top arts organization.
And I would say Renata Simrel. I mean, I think taking over LA 84 and really turning that into the organization that it is. I would also say that we have so many elected leaders that are really very good at being that visionary. And it's hard to be a visionary when you're also recovering and you're in hard fiscal times. But one thing that has been wonderful is how many elected officials are like, use my name. We're part of this advisory committee. We're going to fight for this. It's worth fighting for. And I love that sense of that. legacy leadership, because people are like, even if there's term limits, I want to live in this city and walk my kids around here and say I was part of this.
Yeah, I think that was one of the reasons Councilmember Rahman, like very early on, was like, I get it. Like, you're connecting the dots here.
Yeah.
And I think in terms of who are the visionary leaders, those are the people that are expansive in thinking.
Yeah.
And
Supervisor Barger.
Yeah.
Yep. And just all the congressional leadership that said, absolutely give it.
And I'd be remiss if I wouldn't say, like, Mayor Bass. Like, we had an incredible meeting with Mayor and her team and top leaders. They get it.
Yeah.
They see the vision. And I think as we move into the next steps, we're excited to be in deeper partnership with those leaders.
Yeah, we're talking about budget earlier around, we all work on our day jobs, large projects, public-private deals, county deals, and just see hundreds of millions of dollars spent on interesting projects around LA. Speaking of the budget around this, did you have do you have a general idea of the total budget for the project, a loose budget?
We have like
the whole breakdown.
Yeah, like the date we have to literally order materials, buy out contracts. So it's a range. I'd say $150 to $250 million gets you improvements along the whole 28 miles.
Okay. So that was, I just wanted to call that out because, again, working on individual projects in LA that have, little to no impact on the city.
Yeah.
More than $200 million.
Easy.
And you look at this and you're like, all right, $250 million to change the fabric of LA.
Yeah.
How we all get around LA, how it interacts, the fabric, everything is just unbelievable. So I really wanted to point that out of this is something where people need to focus and figure out how to raise this money and how to make this happen.
Absolutely.
And going down that road a little bit more, again, to the unfortunately, you guys, you are the first podcast. So it's like, my wife might be listening. I don't know who else. But we're going to try and get it out in other ways. But, what do you really need from the city, from people listening, from partners, from, bigger companies? Like, if you had an ask out there, what are you really trying to do and get?
Sure. Yeah. So website, festivaltrail.org, has a donate button. Every dollar is tax deductible through our partnership with the California Community Foundation. So we're taking donations. We've raised kind of low six-figure seed capital already from some like early adopters here, but our funding strategy is to first work with philanthropy, with CCF, the California Community Foundation, to be able to have capacity as an organization to really lead the effort. So it's more than us and the few staff we have dedicated to this, and then really to go to those brand sponsors. So it could be anyone from a major bank to a Patagonia to a Nike to groups like that, and really find the most meaningful way they could contribute to the project.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I think the other is we want people to experience this now. We can get on the trains now. We can go to these places now. I want people to say, you know what? I learned something. I'm doing this in 2025. We can do this in 2028. And money is definitely needed in all sorts of ways. But I think people need to understand that $250 million is going to come back in billions.
Yeah.
Getting more people to stay here longer, having people come any time between now and 2028 and beyond, that will make money back. And so again, our goal is fund this not just for the infrastructure you see now, but for the communities that are going to own, operate, and maintain forever. And that's really the legacy we want. And that money is well spent.
I love it.
Sounds like a great place to.
And, when we started this idea of having a podcast, Chris and I had an initial conversation, and we said, the thing about LA and talking about LA is it's so easy to talk down about LA.
Yes.
Everything's bad. Everything's horrible. We don't like the leadership. We don't like the city. We don't like the zoning. It's just never ending. Idea of everything is horrible. And we really went into it saying, let's try and have more positive conversations because there's so many amazing people in LA. You brought this up earlier around the wildfires. Again, blown away by the community coming together, especially in the AEC industry, just everybody coming together to help out. So our goal was to try and find those people that have that mentality of this is a great city.
Yes.
And it just needs the right people behind it. And it needs the right initiatives and things like this to come to fruition. And we just need to keep pushing on that side. And we need to stay positive and stay the path. And just so thankful you guys came in and were talking to us about, again, a very positive thing for LA. If anyone's listening, anything you can do to help this initiative, get it to the right people, email it, forward it. Let's all rally together and really try and make sure that we see this happen. At least get it halfway there by the Olympics, and we'll finish the rest half or whatever it takes.
We'll get there.
But to get it done,
Let's just do it all. I mean,
let's get it done.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys. Really appreciate it.
Yes,
thank you.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And positivity right now is such a revolutionary act.
Yeah.
So, thank you. That is a gift
Yeah.
because giving people that vocabulary to say, yes, we're really feeling good about something today. That's a big deal.
Totally.
Awesome.
Well, thank you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming. That was awesome. Good
Thank
stuff.
you.